Good morning. Welcome to CPAC 2024 on Broadcast Row. I'm Andy Mangione, uh, sitting in and hosting the AMAX Better for America podcast. I want to welcome everybody joining us live, and we're kicking it off right now with our very first guest, who is David Walker, the former United States Comptroller General from 1998 through 2008. And I want to thank you for taking the time to sit with us this morning.
Good to be with you, Andy.
You know, one of the hallmarks of your time in office was your advocacy for fiscal responsibility, recognizing the track that the country is on in terms of the spending, the deficit spending, reckless spending, and you worked very hard to not only expose it, but to do something about it. You're no longer in that office, but you've been doing a lot of work with regard to Article 5, which allows the states to call a convention of states to make amendments to the Constitution. Now, AMAC has been involved in that area with regard to fiscal responsibility amendments. So, for our viewers that may not be familiar with Article 5 in that section of the Constitution, could you just kind of give a quick tutorial about what it is and what it can lead to?
Sure. Article 5 is the section of the United States Constitution that talks about how do you go about amending the Constitution. And there's two ways to amend the Constitution. The old-fashioned way, two-thirds of the House, two-thirds of the Senate vote for a proposed amendment. And then it goes to the states, and three-quarters of the states have to ratify it. And unless and until three-quarters of the states ratify it, it's not an amendment to the Constitution. We have 27 amendments. They've all been done that way so far. Mm-hmm. But the founders were very bright people, and they had great foresight. And they envisioned that Washington might become so out of touch and out of control, or that there might be certain issues where the Congress had a conflict of interest, like controlling spending, mounting debt burdens, term limits, campaign finance, that the states should have the opportunity to assert their rights under the Constitution, and that if two-thirds of the states, 34, end up filing an application for a convention of states to propose amendments, not a constitutional convention,
right?
A convention of states to propose one or more amendments to the Constitution, then the Congress shall call the convention. They're cut out. And then if the states, a majority of the states, can agree on a proposed amendment, it goes back to the states for three-quarters to ratify, preferably through conventions of citizens who are pledged for or against it, which is what happened for the 21st Amendment, the repeal of prohibition. The good news is, in 1979, 39 states had active applications, 40 in 1983, but the Congress never did anything because they don't really want the states to assert their rights. And so now the Federal Fiscal Sustainability Foundation, which AMAC has been supportive of,
Yes,
our efforts, are working with the states to sue the Congress for a declarative judgment to be able to make this happen.
you said it was going to take 27 states to call the convention, 27 submitted applications, and we're at 40?
Well, 34 is how many you need.
34, I'm sorry.
We had 39 in 1979.
Okay.
We had 40 in 1983. We don't have as many today, but the key is that once you cross the goal line,
Yes.
they're supposed to have called it. And so that's what the declarative judgment is about, is they have failed to discharge their express, enumerated, non-discretionary responsibility.
And I think it's important when you mention that this is a convention of citizens, and it's been done before.
Correct. Well, the convention, this proposed convention is not, but what has been is the ratification.
Yes.
The ratification, once you have a proposed amendment to get the people, that's the closest thing that we have in our country to a referendum.
Okay.
There's some countries that have it. Switzerland has it. And in fact, Switzerland adopted what's called the Swiss debt brake back early in the 21st century in order to deal with the issue that we have to deal with. And it was ratified by over 80% of the Swiss citizens. So we need to use that as a model to do what we need to do here.
Absolutely. How can we get Congress to act? Okay.
Well,
Now, I know you smile,
no,
but
I
I mean
understand.
it's I mean there's all kinds of activity going on right now.
Yeah.
We're close.
Yeah. Well, first, there is House Concurrent Resolution 24, all right, that's pending in the House by Chairman Jody Arrington, who's chairman of the Budget Committee, designed to try to be able to bring light to this issue. With light comes heat, and hopefully with heat comes action. But in my personal opinion, the only way it's going to happen is if the states sue the Congress. If the states sue the Congress, that may be a wake-up call for them. They may end up proposing something on their own, or else the Supreme Court is going to have to make a decision, and that decision is likely to say, receive them, store them, count them, and if we were ever over 34, call the convention, and we were.
Some states have already sued Congress.
They haven't yet.
Okay, but
we have two states that have said they're willing to sue, and now we're working with others to do it. And my personal view is, once it happens, you'll have a bunch of other states jump on board.
And this is the job of those states' attorneys general.
It can be the attorney general. Typically, it's the attorney general, but it could be the legislature, it could be the governor. It depends upon the constitution of each respective state.
Okay. In your humble opinion, being involved with this for so long, do we have a shot at this?
We have a shot. I think this year is a key year, not just for the election, but it's a key year with regard to not just this issue on the constitutional amendment, but also I've been fighting for a statutory commission that would engage the American people with the facts, the truth, the tough choices, solicit input from the American people, make a package of recommendations dealing with mandatory spending, discretionary spending, and revenues that would be guaranteed an up or down vote in Congress. And the good news is there are bipartisan bills in both the House and the Senate, and one of those bills has already passed the House Budget Committee. The Speaker is for it, and so I'm hopeful what will happen is it'll be added on to the final appropriations bills for fiscal 2024.
From your lips to God's ears, okay? However,
God's with us. The problem is the Congress,
Exactly right. That's a great point.
That's right.
And I think it's very important. I just want to underscore that the whole idea of all this activity is to reel in the reckless spending, put the nation back on solid financial footing. And it's clear to me, now this is just Andy speaking here, that left to their own devices, there's no way Congress will address this. They're just not interested.
Well, they like to spend
on their own.
They like to borrow.
Yeah.
They like to mortgage the future.
Yeah.
What's going on now is irresponsible, it's unethical, it's immoral, and it must stop. One of the founding principles of this country was the concept of stewardship. Stewardship is not just generating positive results today, not just leaving things better off when you leave than when you came, but better positioned for the future.
Yeah.
And we have a major sustainability problem with regard to our finances. If you can't put your finances in order, your economy is going to suffer. Your international standing will suffer, your national security will suffer, and over time, your domestic tranquility will suffer.
Very good points. Very good points, David. I'm going to pivot right now. In your career, you served as a trustee for both Medicare and Social Security.
Right.
As you know, AMAC has been, one of the foundational aspects of AMAC's foundational issues, I should say, is the solvency of Social Security.
Right.
Our late and great founder, Dan Weber, put together a Social Security guarantee that we've been talking about this on Capitol Hill for over a dozen years, that makes Social Security solvent without raising taxes. That's and you can find more and find out about that more at our website. But we have been, I remember when I first started coming to this town, 2013, 2012, telling, hey, we only have 20 years left. Well, all of a sudden, we have 10 years or less before the trust fund reverts to a cash-in, cash-out basis. We have to fix this. I look at people that are members of Generation Z, Generation Y. They're not even counting on Social Security. None of them believe it's going to be there. They're paying into it, and they're aware of that. This has to be addressed. As a trustee, from your point of view, what can we do to motivate Congress? Now, I know this is an election year and they like to kick that can down the road. I'm confident that they'll address it eventually, but I just don't, I fear how they'll do it.
Well, first, the last time we reformed Social Security was 1983, the so-called Greenspan Commission. And you might ask, well, why did we reform it in 1983? Because the so-called trust fund, and I call it the Trust the Government Fund, the trust fund was going to go to zero within a matter of months. If it ever goes to zero, it means that you immediately have to cut benefits for tens of millions of Americans, which is not only inequitable, it's politically unacceptable.
Right.
And so they reformed it. When they reformed it in 1983, they didn't consider demographics. They didn't consider longer lifespans. They didn't consider reduced ratios of workers to retirees, if you will. And so when I was a trustee from 1990 to 1995, we provided a more full and fair accounting. We had a public trustees report. We blew the whistle to say that the 83 Commission did not solve the problem, that Social Security's got a challenge, but Medicare's got a bigger challenge. Now, here's what's ironic. reforming Social Security is one of the easiest things that we need to do. Why? Because you touched on part of it. Because young people don't think they're going to get it. They're wrong. It's going to be reformed, but
Yes.
they're wrong. Secondly, seniors think they're going to get taken advantage of. There are other words I could use, but I won't, okay? And the truth is they're both wrong, okay? And so what we need to do is to be able to make some reforms that can phase in over time and ultimately will exceed the expectation of every generation of Americans. Now, something else that people don't know, when I was a partner with Arthur Anderson, after I'd been a Social Security and Medicare trustee, your competing organization, which I won't mention the name,
Thank
okay?
you.
And in addition to the Concord Coalition and the White House, this is during the Clinton administration, had 3 forums around the United States to try to prepare the way for Social Security reform. And I was the truth teller. I was the one that was picked to be the truth teller and to kind of help show the way forward. We would have had Social Security reform during the Clinton administration. All the ground had been tilled. He was prepared to do it. He was putting his political capital behind it. He wanted to be one of his legacies until he experienced the Monica Lewinsky situation. And all of his political capital was thrown. The framework for reform is very similar to what it was back then, which reform to make the defined benefit program, to make it solvent, sustainable, secure, and add on a supplemental individual account because we have to get our savings rate up. Social Security is not enough, okay? And we just need to get it done. Now,
Right.
the good news is that this fiscal commission that I referred to before, this would be part of that commission. And what I've recommended is not just to make it part of that commission, but also have it so if the overall package doesn't pass, be able to pull out the Social Security by itself and vote on it with an up or down vote, because I'm confident we can come up with something that can be enacted into law on a bipartisan basis. And it's got to be bipartisan.
It has
If
to
it's not
be, yes.
bipartisan, it won't get done.
That's right. And I appreciate your optimism because we share that optimism at AMAC and at AMAC Action. I believe it's going to be reformed. I just don't want a last minute fix where they increase taxes, raise remove the cap, and all of a sudden if you're organized as an LLC, you get a huge tax increase. That's not the right way to do it.
Well, it will be reformed because they will not allow a 20% plus across the board cut in benefits,
Right.
in about 10 years if they do nothing. Now, here's the key. Both major candidates for the presidency of the parties, Biden and Trump, are saying they won't touch Social Security.
Right.
Well, let me tell you what that means. That means a 20% plus cut,
Exactly.
because that's what you get if you do nothing. And what I call that laggardship, not leadership. We need leadership, not laggardship. And I'm going to try to do what I can to make sure that happens.
And we're going to be with you on that. As a matter of fact, I know that you talked to our president, Bob Carlstrom. We're putting together a statement to keep the narrative alive. Now, we recognize that this is an election year, and the last thing they're going to do is try and take on a huge initiative like reforming Social Security in a presidential election year. But we're not going to let this narrative die down. We represent 2.1 million members who are very concerned about their benefits. And not only that, but they're concerned about legacy benefits, their children and their grandchildren. And this has to get done. But
Well, here's the key. The commission should be passed this year, hopefully within the next couple of months, but it won't report until 2025. And that's the way to do it, all right? So therefore, you do the citizen education engagement, you do the analysis, you prepare the way to be able to make a package of recommendations for an up or down vote, but it won't be considered until 2025 after the elections.
Right. And it'll be here before you know. But absolutely, we're in it for the long haul. We're in it for the long game. And I appreciate that we're able to work alongside patriots like you who recognize the problem. Not only that, but actually have well thought out fiscal solutions to this. I remember being in a member of Congress's office last year, just last summer. He said we could fix it tomorrow. We can fix it. It's a math problem. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's the new 4-letter word in fiscal policy, math, M-A-T-H. But let me tell you this, I did a 10,000-mile, 27-state national fiscal responsibility bus tour in 2012, and we got 77% agreement from a representative group of voters in the North and the South on how to reform Social Security. We also got higher percentages of support for tax reform, Medicare, health care, defense, and other issues. The people are way ahead of the politicians. The answer is the first 3 words in the Constitution: we the people.
Exactly right.
And if we can engage the people, set the table for a tough vote, we can diffuse this ticking debt bomb and create a better future for our
You just described a huge appetite among voters that want this addressed and fixed. So any politician or bureaucrat that tells you otherwise, they're out of touch or they're ignoring reality.
Well, unfortunately, in Washington, they tend to think they have all the answers and they want to come up with something and then kind of sell it to the American people. That's exactly the wrong way to do it.
Right.
You have to start with the American people and end with the American people, and the Congress and the president are in the middle. They're the ones that ultimately have to vote because we have a republic. It's a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. But you have to start with the people.
People, how can our viewers learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, you can go to the Federal Fiscal Sustainability Foundation site, which is letusvotefora.org. That's a good place to go with regard to the Article 5 amendment process.
Mm-hmm.
You can check HCR 24, which is the resolution that's in the Congress right now to try to deal with this convention situation. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm
Do you
on
tweet?
X.
Do you have a Twitter handle?
I do.
Or X?
I don't,
That's
I
what
don't
we're calling
do
it
it
now?
very- I had thousands of followers on Twitter, and then I quit Twitter because it got too crazy, and I just came back on. So I'm
Okay.
just building it. But on Facebook, I'm on David M. Walker 7.
Okay.
I was the 7th Comptroller General of the United States. There's only been 8 in the history of the country, and the current one was my number 2, Gene Dodaro. Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, we appreciate your time coming here on Broadcast Row. Thank you for sharing all the information that you have. It's a wonderful mission, and we're happy to be allied with you. We're happy to be fighting this fight. We have no choice but to continue this because we made a commitment to our members, and the government made a commitment to senior Americans. And I think if we could just, as we close this out, people must realize is while Social Security is important, it's the third leg of a three-legged stool. It's designed to keep seniors out of poverty. It's not a retirement plan. So I'm glad you mentioned a savings component in any reform. We have one with our Social Security guarantee. People just aren't saving enough money, but it's just having this conversation shines light not only on perpetuating Social Security, but how it's supposed to be used in a senior American's retirement plan. So.
Well, Social Security, as you know, is the foundation of retirement income security, but it was never intended to be the sole source, okay? And like a house, you can't just live on the foundation. You have to build on it. You have to build on it with employer-sponsored retirement programs and personal savings, if you will. And that's what we need to do. The other thing is that, some people ask me as we close out, why am I doing this? Because this is all pro bono. I don't get paid a dime for doing this kind of stuff. And there's 3 reasons. I love my country, I love my children, and I love my grandchildren.
You sound just like our late founder, Dan Weber. People were asking him why. First of all, they told him, you can't take on the other guys. It's not going to work. Why are you doing this? And then when he started up at AMAC, they asked him why he's working so hard. He said, I've got great grandchildren. That's what I'm concerned about.
I hope to have them too someday, with God willing. All right.
David Walker, thank you so much for joining us. Keep up the great work.
All right.